All right, guys, it's time for the Next Level Guy Show, a men's interview, interest, and improvement-focused podcast featuring interviews with the greats from all industries to help you better your life. Each week, a new episode features an interview with one of the greats, covering all aspects of their story, from life hacks to tips and protocols that have allowed them to live life on the next level. We then highlight concrete action steps that you can use to improve your life. And now, your host, Ian Dawson Mackay.
And today's guest is Kieren Lefevre. Kieren is a Jiu-Jitsu YouTuber, BJJ strength and conditioning coach, a certified fitness trainer, ISSN-Sports nutrition specialist, co-host of the Beyond Jiu-Jitsu podcast, self-professed Jiu-Jitsu nerd, and creator of the longevity course. He helps BJJ athletes get strong, lean, and mobile, on and off the mats, no matter the level you're at. No matter what you're looking to improve on, he has videos to help you improve your Jiu-Jitsu and level up. He covers Jiu-Jitsu, nutrition, fitness, mobility, competition, and the BJJ lifestyle, and everything else that comes along with it. Kieren has content to help you improve as a performer in all aspects of BJJ performance. All BJJ, no BS. And now, let's get to the interview. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I found you through Jordan Does Jiu-Jitsu, and anything and everything I wanted to learn about Jiu-Jitsu, you seem to be the man. You had all these amazing, technique breakdowns. You had stuff about coaching, training, competing, anything and everything a Jiu-Jitsu performer needs. But for people who don't recognize your name, and you're going to get some major fans from this, how would you describe who you are? What brings you to the ball, so to speak?
I suppose these days I would describe myself as a BJJ performance coach and enthusiast and content creator. That's pretty much it in a nutshell, to summarize it in like the 5-second elevator pitch.
I like it. And what led you into Jiu-Jitsu? Was there this defining moment? Because you seem to just be Jiu-Jitsu. You seem to be able to coach it, train it, compete in it. But was there this turning point that made you, you hear a lot of people being bullied and stuff? Or?
Yeah, so mine was a bit interesting. I was in the Navy. I was in the Navy for about 6 years, and I left 2 years ago from this recording. So when I was in the Navy, boys will be boys. When we got together in the dorms, we would wrestle and mess around with each other and just kind of like roughhousing. It's kind of like being in high school again, but we're all older.
You've got to know that.
Yeah. We used to call it Snake Pit, right? I don't know why that name came up, but it was Snake Pit, and we'd all just mess rumble sort of thing. And there was this one guy, his name's Dwayne, and he was an pro Muay Thai fighter. And he had done jiu-jitsu to about a blue belt level, I think, at the time. And he would absolutely towel us up, destroy us, like take two on at once sort of thing. And I got in that mindset because I was a young guy. I was a fit guy. I was already like well and truly into training by the time I joined the Navy. I had in this mindset that a lot of young men have, that you can just handle yourself. The whole meme where it's like, I'll see red and bodies just hit the floor. That mentality is so true for a lot of young people. There's a lot of, testosterone. There's a lot of self-confidence, overconfidence in one's abilities. And I had that, admittedly, I had that through and through. And it was, mucking around with someone like Dwayne, who, like I said, was, comparative in his jiu-jitsu journey, only at a blue belt level. And he could absolutely dominate, to this crazy, it blew my mind. And then I got this idea in my mind that I was walking around the streets, not that I was in any sort of dangerous neighborhoods, but I was just walking around, living my life, with no knowledge on how to protect or defend myself. And that's sort of that idea, that seed started to grow in my mind, and it started to trouble me. And, you know, a few years later from then, I just moved very close to a jiu-jitsu gym for work. I would run past it every other day, like have a look in the window, see what they're doing. You know, they're running in circles, they're doing, you know, crazy stuff. And, you know, like a lot of other young men, I listened to the Joe Rogan Experience and the Jocko Willink podcast, and, you know, that idea was reinforced, and I decided just to walk in one day and never look back.
Because it's always the same, isn't it? You know, you hear from everybody, "Oh, you don't know me, man. You don't know my mentality." It's like I see red. I can win every fight I'm in. I can get every girl, and you're like,
yeah.
And then they go and get thrown around by a 115-pound girl, purple belt or a white belt. Yeah. How? Because that's the thing, is a lot of people approach it thinking, "Yeah, I've got this," but tiny bit of technique, tiny bit of timing, control, and stuff, people get thrown around. I mean, I'm the wrong side. I'm just turned 40. Probably my diet is atrocious. Want to get back to it. My blue belt. Kind of lost my way a bit. I need to go back into training. So I think it's perfect, because a lot of people are wanting to go into it, but not understanding how to approach it. Without going into sort of like strength conditioning, stuff like that, how would you advise people to actually just understand jiu-jitsu, to approach it without thinking, I'm going to win every role, and actually go in and be a good student?
Yeah. So I think the conversation would be different for someone that hasn't trained before versus someone in, like, you know, our position where you have a couple of years under your belt already, or even, you know, just 6 months of training under your belt. So if we segregate it to being like, my advice to people that haven't started training jiu-jitsu is the cliche, just start, and then, you know, we come back and listen to the second part of this later. But for people who have already started training, my approach for training jiu-jitsu is obviously getting as much time on the mats as you can. But when you're on the mats, be intentional about it. And a lot of people talk about this. And even you mentioned at the start, Jordan teaches jiu-jitsu. He mentions this concept a lot in terms of being intentional with your training. Have some sort of goal around each session. It doesn't need to, you know, you don't need to climb Mount Everest every session. You don't need to tap your training partners 10 times a piece every session, but have something that you're aiming toward. And I think that being focused and being intentional will really help to maximize your time on the mats. And the second piece of that is obviously what I sort of touched on in the beginning, is to get your mat time maximized, as in more time on the mats is obviously going to improve. But there's also a limit to that. And I'm sure we're going to talk about, you know, managing recovery versus, you know, managing time on the mats and strength and conditioning and everything else. So I'm not saying everyone should be training 2 times a day, but yeah, just whatever time you have available, be intentional behind your training. And I think that will go a long way for most people.
That's a great answer, because that's the thing. People go in and they just feel like it's like a deer in the headlights, because people are flying, flipping and rolling, and you're like, what the hell is going on? And I go in and, you know, you do like a couple of, started with Gracie Baja, and it was like 15 star jumps, 15 squats, run around 3 times. And suddenly it's like, you're now ready to do the most physically, you know, challenging moves of set of all time. What? This doesn't match what we need to do. So how do you kind of build in that initial kind of, because I love how you link your strength and conditioning exercises to benefit the human system, not just get better at bench press. You're showing movements to actually make you a better jiu-jitsu athlete. But how do we then look at implementing a warm-up to get ready for jiu-jitsu? How do we physically prime ourselves?
Yeah, excellent question. I want to start by talking about what John Danaher mentioned in a seminar I was at recently, like last month. John Danaher was in Australia visiting his mum for her birthday. So shout out to John. Nice. I'm sure a lot of jiu-jitsu people know who John Danaher is. He mentioned warm-ups explicitly. He was asked this question. And what he said about warm-ups is there's 2 types of warm-ups in jiu-jitsu. The first type is the type you're mentioning, where it's, you know, you run the laps, you do your star jumps, you do your 10 push-ups where everyone's chanting out the count, right?
Don't remind me.
That type of warm-up is ineffective and it's batshit boring, right? The second type of warm-up that he mentioned was a wrestling style warm-up where instructors take pride on how difficult their warm-ups are, where the warm-ups go for like half an hour, you're doing all sorts of crazy shit and you're exhausted. It's like a workout, right? And that leaves the student in a state of fatigue. So both boredom in the first form and fatigue in the second form are two of the worst mindsets to have when you're about to learn something complex like jiu-jitsu. And I would couple onto that into say that you're exactly right. Doing push-ups, doing star jumps, doing like laps. Yeah, there's an argument to be made that those warm-up modalities can increase your heart rate and get you prepared for some physical demanding work. But what I would prefer is to do something like have all the students do a very short joint mobility warm-up using mobility drills. Or in the case of a beginner's class, an argument can be made is it's a good opportunity to learn basic movements. That's like probably the only time I would advocate for doing like hip escapes and, break falls and things like that for warm-up is a way to learn. But that's for white belts. For, intermediate and above, you should come into class with your own short, like I said, 5-minute mobility warm-up. And then a warm-up could be something like technique. A warm-up could be something like a flow roll. And then getting to the proper technique of the class. And that's similar to what John said, is he expects his students from intermediate and above to warm themselves up. And his warm-ups are drilling techniques or doing a flow roll.
Because every time I used to train, I never felt like I was actually in the class until a bit into it. I always felt like I was all over the place, like I wasn't psychologically primed or ready to move. And I like that approach to come in with an intention. So when we are coming into training, how do we have that intention? If we're getting led by a teacher, professor, whatever you want to call them, how do we have it so that we learn, we have intention? Is it, I'm going to do the best technique I can in this position, or I'm going to try and get 3 perfect ones out of the 10 reps I'm going to do? How do we implement that intentional workout in our class if we're getting led by someone else?
So intention in terms of jiu-jitsu technique, I would say that by the time you reach that blue belt level, you should have a technique or an area of your jiu-jitsu that's your focus, right? Mm-hmm. So say, for example, that you've been up until blue belt, you've been doing nothing but guard. Your guard got you to blue belt essentially, and you realize that you need to start working on passing. What I would do is, under the guidance of your training partners, your coach, or just whatever you're interested in, pick a guard system that you're going to be focusing on for the next 1, 2, even 3 months. Based on that focus, try and put yourself in that position as much as possible. Obviously, we know that jiu-jitsu is so dynamic. You may go entire class without ever being able to put yourself in over-under passing, for example, or like a pressure style passing. Maybe you are being forced to play guard, or maybe you're just getting your back taken and you're forced to defend for a whole class, right? So it depends on obviously the individual roles. But if you go in looking for technique, if you're looking for the over-under, consistently, eventually you'll start to see the entries from everywhere, and that's how you can be intentional. One other way you can be intentional is set yourself mini goals for each of your training partners. By the time you've rolled with or you've been at the same gym for a while, you will start to very quickly recognize and learn the styles, patterns, and systems that your training partners are trying to employ on you. Or like everyone has different training partners that they use as measuring sticks. Say for example, you have Bob and you can't pass Bob's guard. So every time you go in to roll with Bob, your sole focus should be to try and pass his guard. Or maybe you're rolling up against a higher belt and you always get submitted. So maybe instead of having that higher belt submit you 3 times in a row, your only focus with that roll is to reduce the amount of times they submit you to 1 or 0 potentially. So that's where you can have intentional goals and have intention behind your jiu-jitsu regardless of whatever training partner. And on the flip side of that, if you are the higher belt or you are the more experienced or more athletic person in the role, maybe you could work toward, for this role, I'm only going to allow myself to hit these submissions or this one submission, or I'm only going to focus on passing this very specific way, forcing this reaction, and then doing, X submission or something like that. I'm not saying you should force specific training, because this is starting to sound like specific training, because, your training partner needs to work as well. And if you impose your specific training on them, it's not really, it can be considered a little bit unfair. But that's another way you can be intentional. So setting goals to work on holes in your jiu-jitsu, and then being intentional behind having goals for specific partners. And in terms of your mobility or movement, if, say, for example, you have really tight hips and you're getting stuck with it's making your guard retention suffer, for example. If you're focusing on those mobility drills outside the gym, you're focusing on those hip warm-ups inside the gym, and then you try and implement that with playing guard, that's how you can have like a 3-step process to being intentional holistically around your jiu-jitsu.
I love that. I love the thought and the analysis that you put into that. It's rare to see. Like, a lot of people just teach the technique, and it's like, figure out how to piece this together, how to make it a fluid chain. And I love how you back it up with research. You back it up with like white papers that you've read and implement it into your training. But like, a lot of people struggle to create the structure to frame properly. They don't know how to use their body structure in a way. So how would you want people, say, coming back after a long layoff, newbies, etc.? Are you a fan of like the Kit Dale, learning the concepts over techniques? Are you like the Roger Gracie, become a fundamental master? Are you like Bernardo Ferrara, pick 3 or 4 moves, like you were saying, a certain guard and become legendary in that, then build the next one? Yeah. What's your preferred way of learning jiu-jitsu? Because there's such a wide range.
I think all of those systems that you mentioned, and we could rattle off a few more as well, have their merits. They all have pros and cons. And to say that Bernardo, for example, doesn't know what he's talking about, well, look at his success in competition. He's a multiple-time world champion, comes from one of the greatest gyms of his era in Alliance. So and Kit Dale, you could say the same thing, and even the new wave ecological approach of ecological teaching that is being championed by the likes of Greg Saunders. They all have their merits. They all have their pros and they all have their cons. I think that for me as an individual, I really like conceptual based learning to lay the foundation, right? I like learning concepts. However, concepts only get you so far. I think that the reason people like the Rotolo brothers are so dominant in jiu-jitsu at the moment, with less years on the mat compared to some of their more senior competitors, taking out the gift of youth and everything like that. I think that the big part of their success and those like them is their focus on being experts in concepts and being experts in position. But that's not to say they haven't spent countless thousands of hours drilling specific technique, which they have. So I think that you need both concepts to lay the foundation of your understanding, and you need repetition to make those movements in those positions automatic. So we're trying to get obviously automatic responses. So I think that a combination between the two is going to serve you best, and that's the approach that I like. I'll give you a concrete example. When I was learning pressure passing, this was not too long ago, that was the passing system that my coach gave me to focus on, because it worked well with my body type. And so we're
Same
learning
with me.
pressure passing.
I'm a big guy, so they were like, cook them, grind them away.
Exactly. So when I was learning pressure passing, my coach took me through the concept of operating between the knee and the hip. If you get within that zone for pressure passing, or control that area between the opponent's knee and their hip, your pressure pass will most likely be successful. That's the area you need to operate in. You need to enter that area first, control that area, be within that area, and that is how you control an opponent during a pressure pass. But that's the concept. Now, there's many different ways to achieve that through technique. You have your different variations of over-under, like you mentioned Bernardo. That's his like number one passing system. We have our double unders from Andre Galvao. He's very pronounced double under pressure passer as well. But the point is that there's multiple different techniques to achieve that control between the knee and the hip. So the concept lays the foundation, and then the technique builds on the execution.
So what would you kind of be monitoring? Like, are you a fan of like a journal to record it? Are you looking for data on your weight, your how you intrinsically feel about the session? How do you monitor your sessions to know that you're on the right path and where to tweak and stuff like that?
That's an excellent question, because this is something that I've spoken to my coach at length.
Because you're a big fan of templates, aren't you?
Templating things, for sure. I take notes. I keep a jiu-jitsu journal. My training partners, whenever I bust it out, it's like, oh, dear diary, always make fun of me for it. And when I first started doing it as a white belt, people would take the piss out of me, and then my coach would be like, yeah, well, one day, dear diary, we'll be kicking all your asses. So okay, full circle. But yeah, so I keep notes on, you don't have to annotate your roles. You don't have to like write down everything that happens in a role. But if something key or fundamental, or you get stuck on something, or something is really successful, where otherwise it wasn't during a role, maybe write that down and explore it. Maybe write that down, explore it, and then ask your coach the following session to be like, hey, when I was in this, stuck in this deep half guard, for example, against training partner X, I achieved this position, like I was controlling the sleeve, got the underhook, but then I couldn't progress. What do I do? And then you can workshop it. I think that for me, not only is the act of writing being shown to reinforce learning, but it's also a good reference point to come back to jog your memory. I'll share a little example, and there was a reason I chose that deep half. There's a brown belt at my gym, Ollie, who has a very, very good deep half system, again, inspired by Bernardo Faria. And
I hate it.
Over the last, sorry?
I hate that position when I'm
yeah.
If I'm doing it, fantastic. If I'm in it, fuck, it can fuck right
it's
off.
Horrible. So I've been trying to pass this dude's deep half guard for the last 6 months. Just every single roll, he puts me in deep half, and I try and pass it. Or like, I don't let him put me in. He pulls me into a deep half, and I've been trying to pass it. But over the last 6 months, I still haven't been able to pass it consistently. Every so often I do pass it, but I haven't been able to crack the code and pass it consistently. But over this last 6 months, every opportunity where I roll with him, I make a note of how far did I progress in this position now. Now I'm to the point where I feel like I'm at the final stages of passing one variation of his deep half, but it's taken me 6 months to get there, right? So that's a way I can be intentional and track progress with just one training partner. Imagine if you do that across all of your training partners. The problem with tracking your progression in jiu-jitsu is, you're getting better, hopefully, but so are they. So, it's the whole analogy, or the whole dichotomy, if you will, where no matter how fast you progress, they're still progressing, so you can never catch up if the gap's too wide, right? But you can measure your success against them in different ways, like the example of me trying to pass Ollie's deep half guard. So, I think keeping a journal is important, and systematizing it in a way where you're at least considering mini goals versus different training partners, or weighing up your progress against the partners on different metrics. It doesn't need to be on how many times you submit them, or how many points you score on them, or whatever. It can be in a different metric. Was I able to achieve these grips in this position against this guard? It can be as simple as that. That's a lot to think about, and that's more of an intermediate to, I'm assuming advanced approach. So in the early days, simplifying it and focusing on intentional goals across the board is a good way of approaching it. But once you've achieved some of those goals and you're looking for more, you can set intentional goals based on the individuals. That's how I like to do it.
Like I was like, oh, how many taps I got? And then I realized I'm not going to tap the high up belt. Who's going to do it? But if I can look and go, well, I'm actually 3 out of 5 passes actually got close to going through. I go, okay. Like it's like you're saying, the mini goals
exactly.
are basing on your performance and gradual.
Exactly.
I really like that approach. And do we then link the end of a class where most people just bugger off and get changed and never do anything? Is the cool down the same as the warm up? An intentional kind of, cooling the body down, letting the emotion cool, letting the adrenaline spike, because you get these idiots who come along and say, you have a 90-minute carb window, you have to eat all your protein by this point. And, there's people have heard it on Men's Health or these other sites, that we don't have a clue what to do. What should be a cool down from leaving the gym to is there sports specific movements we do? Then what should we eat? How should we go back to normality is probably a good way of saying it.
Yeah, we've just gone to war. How do we cool ourselves down from that? How do we come down from that cliff? Yeah, excellent question, Ian. I think that for my focus around immediate post training is to basically regulate the central nervous system. Like you mentioned, you've just had a huge dump of adrenaline. You've just gone to war for an hour or an hour and a half, So I think that picking 3 to 4 stretches, and I use the term stretch intentionally here, to basically down-regulate your central nervous system and calm your body down. And, that will support you moving back to normality and regulate you out, lower your heart rate. So it can be jiu-jitsu specific or it can be individually specific. What I mean by that is, let's take the example I used before where maybe you're working on your guard and you've identified that hip mobility is a big factor to improving your guard retention, because a big part of guard retention is your ability to get your knees to your chest. So maybe that is a sticking point for you. So maybe you could use the cool down as a time to work on some static stretches or stretching holds to work on your hip mobility. If that's something you're working on, or maybe I don't know, you have issues with your back, you could do some back stretches or something along those lines. Basically choosing some 3 to 4 very simple, not too strenuous a mini stretching routine, and go through it maybe 2 rounds. And you don't need to hide off into a corner and be, or Zen mode. You can still talk shit with your training partners and whatever. It's just while everyone's sitting around talking shit, you can be the guy stretching and talking shit. So a 2 for 1, if you will. And then, I think that is a good way to be intentional behind your cooldown. Now let's tackle the second part, nutrition wise. You mentioned metabolic window. Now this goes, believe it or not, goes back and forth in the literature, the sports nutrition literature all the time. My latest sort of stance on it, if you will, is I try to take the medium line. Let me explain so I stop talking around in circles. Basically, the concept is there a metabolic window? A metabolic window being, is there a prime time to get protein in post-workout? Or is there a prime time to get carbohydrate in post-workout? I'd say yes and no. There is, but it's not as important as what people have put the emphasis on. Like back in the day, when I first started lifting weights, when I was like 17 at a gym, I had guys telling me, oh, you have to smash a protein shake within like 10 minutes. Otherwise you go catabolic. And there was this scary word, catabolic, don't go catabolic.
It's like your body shoes off any protein after that. It's like, no,
exactly. And you lose all your muscle. Your whole workout is null and void. You're wasting away in front of everyone. No, it's not like that at all. But is there a metabolic window, or is there an optimal window of getting protein in post-workout? Yeah, well, in some literature, yes, there is. But is it as important as you're going to go catabolic and everything's null and void? No. So what I would say is if you can, and I don't even do this myself every day, if you can, post-workout, try and get in around 20 grams of protein and around the same in simple carbohydrates. and that will prime you for your larger meal an hour later. So that can be in the form of, what I always recommend to people is something like a protein shake if it's suitable for you, and a medium-sized piece of fruit like a banana. And that will give you approximately 20 grams of carbohydrate, and depending on the protein source, 20 to 25 grams of protein. And that is a really good 1-2 combo if you're interested. Now, if that's something that doesn't interest you, or logistically it's too difficult, don't stress. You're not like leaving gains on the table. You're not, doing your body a disservice. I wouldn't stress about it. It's not the most important. Nutrient timing is really a 1%er, in my opinion. It can be important if you're a pro athlete, but if you're an everyday jiu-jitsu player and you just want to get healthier, you want to feel better, perform better, and eat better, nutrient timing is probably one of the last things on the list of priorities.
I like that, because that's something that everybody says, oh, that's so important, and then this is so important. And before you know it, you've got no time to do anything else. So what...
Exactly.
What, in addition, would you want people doing? Because you've got a fantastic series on about strength and conditioning, how to, you've got these like ebooks, how to actually have a standard program that makes you a better jiu-jitsu athlete. Because I think that's what a lot of people forget, is you're not getting stronger just for the disco muscles. You're getting stronger to be a better athlete. And
yeah.
I mean, I used to power lift, and then I could barely get my legs over my head the first time we had to, put the feet to the floor. I was kind of like, what is this witchcraft? Like, like you can see the neck. But how do we pick like a program that makes us a better athlete? Fixes the energy leaks we have, makes the jiu-jitsu is more beneficial and links to the jiu-jitsu movements. And not just, oh, look at my bicep, but I can't do shit with it. I can't frame with it. I can't block with it. How do we pick the right variations of the movements? Or is it just mix it up to keep it fun, but not take away from your training? What kind of guiding philosophy do you have?
I think the first thing I'll say is the best workout you can do is the best workout for you is the one that you're going to do, or the one that you enjoy doing, right? The one you're willing to do, if you will. So first and foremost, you touched on a good point. Like, is it something that you enjoy? Not everyone is going to enjoy weightlifting. A lot of people that train jiu-jitsu don't like lifting weights, and that's why they train jiu-jitsu instead, to stay active. But if you're in a position where you want to do some strength training specifically for jiu-jitsu, then picking jiu-jitsu specific movements is ideal. Now, I made this really... what I think is a cool Venn diagram that I'm about to publish on my newsletter. I'm probably going to put it out on social media at some point. But the Venn diagram, I had a look at what has been put out into the jiu-jitsu strength and conditioning sphere, or the out of social media. And the way I see it is there's 3 categories of movements that people that train jiu-jitsu tend to gravitate towards. On the one spectrum, we have bodybuilder style movements, things like, your bench press, your conventional deadlift, etc., or the big 3 of you, or even powerlifting movements that you mentioned. So that's on the far left, if we imagine a Venn diagram. On the far right, we have jiu-jitsu specific movements, where it's like using a gi to do pull-ups, using a gi grips to do, different rows and stuff, and doing like kettlebell, Turkish get-ups, things of that nature. And then we have the middle, the overlap of the Venn diagram. And that's something, these are movements that I've sort of looked at, and other people in the industry have looked at and said, these are a good mix between. Now, the reason that I don't necessarily recommend going too far to the right, being the totally jiu-jitsu specific only, and if it doesn't look like a hip escape, then don't do it sort of thing. The problem with that is those movements, they're great, but if you do those in isolation without considering some of the fundamentals, you're leaving a lot of strength gains on the table. Like if you are not doing deadlifts because you can't imagine a situation in jiu-jitsu where you are deadlifting, I think that your imagination needs some work, but hypothetically, definitely. But hypothetically, if you're avoiding that because it doesn't look like a jiu-jitsu technique, then you're forgetting that all the benefits that deadlifts have. But on the flip side, if you're doing bench press because you want, as you put it, the disco muscles, and you want to get the better chest, you can achieve the same sort of results, but with supplementing it with slightly different variations of the bench press, you're going to have safer, more protection on your shoulders and better translation to the sport that you're getting strong for in the first place. So it's an act of trying to find the overlap. Now, all this may be very confusing to most people that don't have a strength and conditioning background. Like, okay, that's all well and good, but how the fuck do I do that? Like, you're saying, okay, choose the fundamentals and then identify the jiu-jitsu specific and find that overlap. Well, how do I do that? Well, look at different positions. Let's take the bench press, because this is a common one. A lot of people that train jiu-jitsu have barbell bench press in their strength and conditioning programs because it's a bodybuilder style movement, it's a powerlifting style movement, it's fun, it gets big pecs, etc. But what I would say is you don't have to not bench press because it's a very awesome fundamental pushing movement. I would say replace it with either dumbbell variations to put less strain on your shoulders, enable you to get your elbows a little bit more closer to your body, and it more simulates a jiu-jitsu movement. Or better yet, I would say replace it with floor press, which is a bench press done off the floor. And then you may be saying, if you are strength and conditioning orientated, you may be saying, okay, but why are we limiting our range? Why are we removing leg drive? Why aren't we focusing on just doing the movement that's going to make us as strong as possible? Well, for this specific exercise, I don't want leg drive. I don't want full range of motion. I want to protect your shoulders. I want to simulate you bridging off getting someone off you in mount or something like that, or using your frames off the floor. I want to simulate that in this specific example. So that is an example of how you can identify an exercise and modify it for your sport.
It's time for a quick break. There are millions of potential products to buy, so how do you know which ones are worth your hard-earned money? Simple. You go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and explore those that will transform and improve your life. You'll find deals, listener exclusives, and special offers with some great companies. Recommendations are 100% honest and only on items Ian has tried or believes in. The companies showcased will make you a better man in all areas of your life. Simply go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and level up.
Because mentioning your newsletters, for example, there was a recent one on hydration, one about like your ebooks that you give away free. That a lot of people would be paying top dollar for them because they're so good, and you're giving away a great program to get people in a shape. You take all this out, you take all the really kind of like high level expertise out of it. So you say to people, just follow that, do that. Don't ruin your training. Use it as a side. Use it as a bit. You take all the hard stuff out of it for people to say, there you go, just rock that. You'll see the gains, and I love that. I love you give so much free quality content out. What about mobility? Because the other great thing you do is you don't just talk about how to be an animal and explode and go through people. You say you've got tight shoulders, do this. If you've got restrictive like hips, do this, and you show the stretch to do and things like that. What kind of mobility, like side training would you do? How do we make the movements beneficial to jiu-jitsu? Is it like 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night? Is that old style thinking? Is it beneficial? How can we do these things?
Well, I would say that with the whole like 10 minutes of the morning, 10 minutes of the evening, if you have time and you're willing, go for it. That is always going to be beneficial. If you have time to dedicate once a week to do like an hour long, instead of doing like weightlifting specifically, do mobility. So active mobility, becoming stronger in different ranges of motion, and maybe throw in some stretching in there as well. Great, go for it. But a lot of people don't have time to, or not saying don't have time, but aren't willing to invest that time in just mobility when they're trying to balance all of their other life responsibilities, and eliminate that. Just look at your training schedule for the average jiu-jitsu athlete. that is considering adding mobility. You have your jiu-jitsu, which is an average between 2.5 to say 4 sessions per week. And then you have strength and conditioning. I recommend a minimum of 2 to get real benefit. If one's all you can manage, do it, but 2 is minimum in my opinion. And then I'm asking you to add another mobility session on top of that. It all becomes too much, right? So in terms of when to include your mobility, I recommend, if you can do it of the morning, great, go for it. Not realistic. So do it as a warm-up before your standard class warm-up. So get to class just 10 minutes earlier than you normally would. 10 minutes, if you can manage it, and do your mobility then. If you do that every session, that's 40 minutes. If you do 4 a week, 4 jiu-jitsu sessions a week, that's 40 minutes per week of mobility. If you're doing 2 strength and conditioning sessions, do the same thing for strength and conditioning. Do a mini 5 to 10 minute mobility warm-up. So that's now an hour. That's 60 minutes of mobility that you're doing. That's not including the cool down time that we already spoke about. You don't have to necessarily give yourself a full mobility session. But if you want to, and if you're able to, yeah, it would definitely help. It would definitely be beneficial. I do have you may have seen it, Ian, but it's a 30-day jiu-jitsu mobility challenge that I did.
Fantastic.
It was to promote the BJJ performance and longevity course that I did with Jordan from Jordan Teaches Jiu-Jitsu. So that is basically what I'm talking about here. Each video is about 10 minutes. I think the longest one is like 15, but the average of 10 minutes long. And they each day focus on a different target area to achieve something in jiu-jitsu. For example, there's like multiple guard retention series. There's the elbow fix. There's the shoulder fix, etc. So if you did something like that, whether it's broken up between before and after class, or split between jiu-jitsu and strength and conditioning, and if you did maybe like 4 of those a week, that's 40 minutes of mobility per week, more than you would normally be getting. And it seems less daunting than carving out a 40-minute block, which most people just simply can't do. So that's how I'd recommend tackling getting your mobility in.
I love that you're that kind of coach, that kind of don't take more out of your life. Do while you're there. Yeah. Just add more to it. I love how you plan and think this through, and because that series alone, it's worth hundreds of pounds. Hundreds of dollars, but hundreds of pounds. It's the quality in it, and it's like you do video after video, and it's just like this guy just knows where all like fat out of shape people need help with. And it's like you read their mind and go, okay, you got tight hips, you got tight ankles, you've got something on how to fix shoulders, all the common problem areas. One of the biggest things definitely. I have is I blow out my ass when I'm rolling. I blow out my ass when I'm pushing the limit, because I'm 6'4", I'm a heavy guy. I've never really had to push it because I can always pressure past top game and stuff. Yeah. I've never really had to be fighting from the bottom and spinning and all that. The advice I always got was to get better at jiu-jitsu, to roll more, is to just roll more. Don't worry about it. Yeah. That's how you do it. Now, you've got a video where you talk about that just makes you more BJJ specific endurance. How do we actually build like VO2? Because you talk about level 2 endurance and things like that. You have this fantastic reason and science behind it. Can you go a little into that? Because I know you're a big fan of just rolling more.
Yeah, you're trolling. This is something that I definitely wanted to talk about. Now, I have to give a shout out to Carsten Overdite, a Norwegian researcher that does has done a lot of his research in BJJ specific conditioning, strength and endurance. Basically, a lot of his research has been done purely on BJJ to try and improve the body of literature around jiu-jitsu and grappling. And unbeknownst to a lot of people, there is a body of literature around jiu-jitsu and grappling, and the findings are very, very interesting. Now, whenever I come out with videos or statements on podcasts and say things, I always get the pushback from other scientifically minded people. Like they'll throw their credentials out and say, why are you making bold statements on one paper? But it's not one paper, it's a body of literature. So we have meta-analysis, which is a combination of multiple different studies around this very question. How do you improve your gas tank for jiu-jitsu? The old school method, which comes from like that very hardened old school, 90s, noughties, old generation jiu-jitsu is just roll more, get on the mats. And the only way to get better the only way to improve your gas tank for jiu-jitsu is to do more jiu-jitsu. That's what a lot of old school black belt coaches will tell you. Just show up to the gym. There is some truth to it in terms of the more jiu-jitsu you do, the more time you spend on the mats, the more efficient your movements will be. The more efficient your movements are, you're going to use less of your gas tank, right? Now, if we use like the analogy of like a car and say that, a white belt, when they're doing something like some sort of technique, like, I don't know, a sweep or something like that, because they're less efficient with that movement, they'll use 20% of their gas tank. Input a brown belt in there because they've had years and years of doing that exact sweep on many different opponents, and they are very efficient with their movements. Nothing is wasted. They may use 1%. So who has the bigger gas tank? Is it the brown belt or is it the white belt? Well, we don't know. But the white belt is using 20% to do one move. The brown belt is using 1%. But the question is, will jiu-jitsu make you more fit? Does jiu-jitsu improve your cardio fitness? The answer to that, based on some of the research that has been done, and again, it's not complete. More needs to be done. But what we have so far is the answer is to a level, to an extent. If you take someone off the couch and you put them in a jiu-jitsu program for 6 months, are they going to improve their cardio fitness? Unequivocally, yes. Absolutely. If you take someone that has no base level of aerobic fitness, are they going to improve their cardio fitness based on a VO2 max measurement? Can you assess their VO2 max before, put them through 6 months, assess it after, and will you see an improvement? Yeah, you will. But here's the kicker. It will be to a certain ceiling. It will be there is a ceiling effect on the amount of improvement you can make on your VO2 max based on jiu-jitsu alone. And this is counterintuitive because people are like, well, the more jiu-jitsu I do, the fitter I feel. Yeah, because you're more efficient. You're getting mat fit, as we call it. Now, how do you improve your aerobic conditioning for jiu-jitsu? There's two things that you need to consider. And you mentioned both of them already. The first one, you mentioned zone 2 training. And zone 2 training is designed to improve your aerobic base. Zone 2 training is operating within that 50 to 60% of your maximum heart rate and staying there for as long as you can. So low and slow, we call it. Basically, keep your heart rate low, go slow for a long time. That will improve your aerobic base. Imagine your aerobic base as your floor. You're raising your floor level of aerobic conditioning. Now, the next way to improve your aerobic conditioning for jiu-jitsu is improving your VO2 max. This is your maximum output. VO2 max is the gold standard for assessing someone's aerobic fitness or their cardiovascular fitness. It's basically how much oxygen can your body intake over a certain amount of time. What's the maximum volume of oxygen your body can intake? And they're like smartwatches give you an estimate these days. Like there's all sorts of ways to measure. I'm not going to get into how inaccurate they are, but the point is improving your VO2 max and improving your aerobic base will overall be a good 1-2 combo of improving your cardiovascular fitness for jiu-jitsu. So if you want, I can go into specific protocols on how to do both of those and how I recommend inputting them into a program.
Because I think that's a big thing into it. It's like a lot of people don't understand that you're not getting fitter. You're just not using as much energy having to get builds on the technique. And that blew me away because I was thinking that makes so much sense. But no one had ever said that to me. And I got that told by a recent black belt. Just roll more. Just roll more, man. Get on the mat more. And I was like, that can't be right.
Yeah.
Because I'm almost breathing at my arse.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, look at it from their perspective, right? If you don't give a shit about the research and you're like, oh, that's whatever, just, you don't need to overcomplicate it. If you look at it objectively, anecdotally, what are the results we see when you do roll more? You get less gassed, right? You're able to go longer, harder, etc., because you're using less of your energy. So is there benefit to that? Hell yeah, there is. Should you be rolling more? Yeah. But Is it making you more cardio fit? No. Now, I think that everyone knows someone that has a huge gas tank on the mats. Maybe they're brown belt or up, right? And they can go a full 10-minute round and, seemingly still have another 10 minutes in them going hard, right? You put that same person on a track, on a bike, on an aerodyne, they die in the ass. They can't even get their heart rate up. They can't even, score like a 55 on a VO2 max scale. And you're like, where is the disconnect? Well, they have sport-specific conditioning. Very similar research has been done in other sports. Believe it or not, sports like soccer have had the very, very similar findings that to a certain extent, the sport makes you fitter, but there's a ceiling effect on that. And for jiu-jitsu, it's theorized in the literature that this is because that jiu-jitsu is supine, right? You're laying down a lot of the time. So gravity is being taken out of the equation. And they're theorizing that has a limiting effect on how it improves your VO2 max. For anyone out there who has trained jiu-jitsu and then has gone and done a wrestling class, and you're like, holy shit, this is so much harder on cardio. Like, what is going on? Well, funnily enough, pro level wrestlers on average have a much higher VO2 max than pro level jiu-jitsu players. And it's because the theory is that they're not supine. Wrestling is mostly done on the feet. It's very explosive, but there's no, you're not laying down, like there's no guard, etc. So that's another theory. And judokas are the same. They have slightly less than wrestlers, but slightly higher than jiu-jitsu players. So the ranking is jiu-jitsu the lowest, then judokas, then wrestlers.
It's some class. I actually thought of my first wrestling class. Oh, that was hell. Suddenly, it takes out all the stalling. It takes out all the guard play. And before you know it, you're just again and again and again. And it's
so hard.
So how then would you want people to eat? I mean, you have a fantastic thing on your Instagram about a diet where you're on about like steak and chips and breakfast wraps and granola. And I'm like, it's almost like you're telling me off when you see my diet at the minute. Like, and I was like, okay, I need to eat like a grown up. But how do we implement that recovery? Because I know we're coming close to our time and I feel like it's literally been 5 minutes. And I was like, this is a podcast in its own in a lot of things. But how do we... Like, how do we eat like an athlete? How do we recover like an athlete? How do we implement that to go back and be better on the mats again for the next session?
Nutrition is, you're right, we could do a full hour on nutrition for jiu-jitsu and not even scratch the surface. I would say that on the outset, if I could just get one thing across to anyone listening about nutrition, it's to prioritize your carbohydrates, prioritize your protein sources, have high quality foods. Just focus on high quality foods. Things like, whole foods. We're looking at an example of high quality protein would be, chicken. You mentioned steak, but in moderation for red meat, fish, etc. Focus on good sources of protein. There's obviously the same equivalent for vegan or plant-based diets as well. Focus on getting around 50% of your intake from carbohydrate. For jiu-jitsu athletes, carbohydrate is going to be your main fuel. Your glycogen replenishment is going to be very important for recovery. And obviously, we also need healthy fats. So don't neglect fat. Fat is not the enemy. So if you were to break it down, I'd recommend for most people, 50% of your diet should be carbohydrate. Approximately 30% of your diet should be protein. And the remaining 20% should come from high quality fat sources. So that's in a nutshell. Pick high quality foods and have that approximate macro split. If you're not interested in splitting your macros like that, look at your plate. Be like 50% of my plate's carbs, around about a fist is the protein source and the thumb is the fat. Go for that, right? In terms of recovery, you can do things like saunas and ice baths and foam rolling and the mobility that we mentioned. All of those things will make you feel better, and subjectively, they'll improve you recovering. Subjectively, they'll make you sleep better, and that will have a flow-on effect for recovery. But as I mentioned just then, sleep is the best way to recover from any like intense sort of exercise regime, any intense routine that you may have. Getting adequate sleep is really important. So I recommend that people get 8 to 9 hours of sleep opportunity per night. Again, that's very hard to achieve, but if you can get a minimum of 7 hours of sleep per night, then you're in the ballpark. So getting that minimum of 7 is really going to be the biggest thing to improve your recovery. So nutrition, adequate levels of carbohydrate, protein, and sleep are going to be the main two that are going to drive the needle. Everything else that costs you money, like saunas and ice baths and massages and things like that, they're good. They're the 1%ers, but they're not the main drivers. So focus on the big two.
I love that. It's like you're kind of, when I'm struggling and you're like, start sleeping like a grown up, start eating like a grown up. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. They go home and they have a McDonald's, and then they stay out playing the PlayStation and all. I know you're a big fan of like creatine as a supplement for everyday kind of usage for athletes. Is there minerals or tools or hacks that you found to sleep better? Is there something like, they say magnesium, for example? Are you
magnesium does help. Well, it depends. Okay, so there's so much you can do for sleep. I went through a period of my life before I even started training jiu-jitsu where I was a self-proclaimed sleeping nerd. I got really into the biohacking sphere, the biohacking movement, but my interest was in sleep. And the ring that I'm wearing is an Oura ring, so it tracks my sleep. So I wear it every day. Like, I'm obsessed with sleep for a long time. Magnesium definitely helps. If you have a deficiency, it will definitely help to supplement that deficiency. And a common one is vitamin D. That will also help your recovery, it'll help you feel better, and it'll help you sleeping. You mentioned creatine as a supplement. Just as an aside, definitely recommend creatine monohydrate for all people training, and even people that don't train. There's been evidence to support that helps your brain health as well, despite not training at all. So creatine is definitely a supplement I recommend. Magnesium is good if you can afford it and are willing to invest in supplements. But again, it comes down to that 1-2% benefit, if you will. So, but then again, if we take all these 1-2%ers that I've mentioned and add them all together as an aggregate, then we're looking at substantial gains, particularly over a long period of time. But I think in the short term, to improve sleep, I know you've probably heard it a million times, but limiting your amount of blue light exposure before bed will really, really help. Having some sort of down regulation, particularly if you have a similar routine like me. I train jiu-jitsu. I come straight home, I eat immediately, and then I'm pretty much getting ready for bed because I train pretty late at night. Our class finishes at 8 p.m. So by the time I get home, shower, eat, or whatever, it's nearly 9:30. And it's time to sort of wind down. So having some sort of system where you're like, hey, 30 minutes before bed, I'm just going to turn off my screen. I'm going to put my phone on red light mode, and maybe I'm going to do some stretches or just wind down, read a book, something like that. Right? Having some sort of down regulation routine will really, really help you get to sleep faster and improve your sleep quality overall. And it can be as simple as like a 30, 20 minute, not even routine, but just things that you put in place to improve your sleep.
I mean, I'd love to have you back. I mean, I know we're up to an hour already, and it literally does feel like 5 minutes. But for those listening, before we can maybe go into another one and do on diet, and one on competing, one on education, review, all this kind of stuff, how do we take everything that you've been discussing? Is it literally tweak a 1% here, look for 2% gain there, and just see how it feeds into your jiu-jitsu, review it, and then see, okay, I got good sleep then, but I need better diet. How do we kind of shape it to be a better BJJ performer going forward? Is it a way to kind of pull it all together?
Excellent questions. I think if we look at it, it depends on the individual and where you're at and what you're willing to do. It all comes down to what you're willing to do, how much time you're willing to invest, how much energy you're willing to invest, and how bad you want it. But if I was to say, okay, someone's on the fence, they're like, yeah, everything he's saying is all well and good, but what can I do now? What are the key takeaways? I'd say, for starters, start a strength and conditioning routine of some sort. Add it on to your week. If you're training 4 jiu-jitsu sessions per week and you can only train 4 times per week, remove 1 jiu-jitsu session, add 1 strength conditioning. That's what I'd recommend in that sphere, right? Just get started. 2 days a week maximum is all you need. And funnily enough, I have a free 2-day Strong for Jiu-Jitsu program that you can download. I'm sure we can put a link or whatever. So that's S&C sorted. Just start. Second is nutrition. Start to be conscious of what you're eating. the more aware you are of what you're eating, you automatically start making better choices without even using a nutrition coach or logging all your food and tracking all your macros and everything like that. You don't really need to do that at the very beginning. Just be more aware of what you're eating. Ask yourself, is what I'm about to eat, is it high quality food that's going to help me perform, sleep, and move better? If the answer is no, then maybe don't eat it. Maybe eat something else, or maybe eat it once a week instead of every other night, if that makes sense. So that's something you can do immediately. With the mobility, really simple. Do 5 to 10 minutes of a mobility warm-up before and after class. Just make it 5 in the beginning. Just will yourself to do 5 minutes before class, 5 minutes after. All of a sudden, you've done 40 minutes a week of mobility.
So
that's for the big 3. Huge difference. So those are the big 3 you can do right now. Admittedly, the strength and conditioning one would probably be the most challenging, particularly if you don't have a gym or anything like that. I do have a body weight version of that strength and conditioning program. So if you don't have a gym, you can do that instead if you want that. So yeah, there's options there for everyone in every situation. But just start, be more conscious with your nutrition, and get your mobility in before and after class. Now, that's for someone that just wants to do things now. If you want to take it to the next level, I recommend seeking out some form of programming, like I've already mentioned, or a coach. Start consuming some, jiu-jitsu specific nutrition guidance, jiu-jitsu specific strength and conditioning guidance. There's some really, you don't even have to get it from me. There's some really good guys out there that are doing some amazing stuff. Not hard to find. But if you are interested, you can check out the free ebooks, the free training programs that we have. And if you want to learn more, read blogs, etc., it's on my website, Kieren Lefevre, BJJ.com. Check that out as well. So that's a good place to start.
I love how you already answered my last 2 questions. I like it, super efficient. Because I'll have the links to the show notes and things like that. But are you taking people on? Are you looking to do more online coaching? Are you looking to kind of build that business model of a online platform? Where do you want to take the evolution of your business?
So I have been an online personal trainer and nutrition coach for I don't even know. I think just over 6 years. So I've done it. I've been doing it well before I started training jiu-jitsu. And I used to be a amateur bodybuilder, a natural bodybuilder. And I was coaching bodybuilding clients for a while there. But the long and the short of it is I stopped taking on online clients for many years there. And I was creating content and just, spreading the word that way. But up until recently, literally as of today, ironically, this coincides very well. I've just started taking on online clients again. I was doing consulting, one-off sort of consulting, 1 hour here, 1 hour there, that sort of thing, and writing programs on request. But now I'm officially accepting online clients as of, it's like I've timed this today. But when this launches, it would have been out for, I'm not sure when this goes live, but a couple of weeks or something like that. So.
And how do we go about doing that? Is that coming to your website and signing up, or do you want to
Yeah, so check out Kieren Lefevre, BJJ.com. And my name's kind of hard to spell, but if you type that into Google, it'll be the first hit. Or if you can find it via my YouTube channel. On the website, you have all the information on all the coaching products that I offer. But at the moment, I'm really focused in on trying to offering a 12-week BJJ coaching package. So I've found in the past, anything less than 12 weeks is not necessarily enough to get results for most people. And anything more than 12 weeks is too large of a commitment. It's too daunting. So 12 weeks there's a reason that a lot of coaches operate in that 12-week period. It's because it's the sweet spot. So I'm doing 12-week BJJ coaching, which will be the strength and conditioning, the cardio, the nutrition, and the mobility, all rolled into one package, delivered via an app, all the bells and whistles, that sort of thing. And to sign up to that, if there's spots available, you can check out the website. There's a big link right below the banner. Click on that, you'll find it.
Well, that's it for another week. And thank you for listening. It's now time to take what you've learned and use it to develop and enhance your life with the key points mentioned. Listen, try it, embrace it, use it, and crush it. Now's your time to hit that next level in your life. If you liked this episode, then please leave a comment on the show notes or a review of the show on your podcast platform. Everything helps evolve the show. Until next week, keep seeking the next level in your life.